Hi, welcome to Conveyor Meetup. Today we have Ramon Nissen, who we presented on Tackle, which we're super excited about. Most recently, they just released Tackle 1.0 Operator. And in case you missed it, last week we had the Tackle test team come on here and give a demonstration of their latest release. So super excited to see what Ramon has in store for us today. Aside from that, I just want to go over a few housekeeping items. So I will send out the slides in the recording probably around 2 days from now. Outside of that, if you have any questions, feel free to put it into the Q&A. I probably will save most of them for once Ramon gets done with his presentation. That way he has enough time to get through it. But if there's something that's super relevant and I see a good stopping point for him, then I'll ask the question. Other than that, I think that's it. Ramon, it's all yours.
Okay, so hello everyone. Just 1 second, allow me to share my screen. Is it okay now, Jonathan?
Yep, you're all good.
Okay, so welcome everyone to this Conveyor Meetup session. Today we will be discussing some cool stuff around migration and modernization of applications to adopt and embrace Kubernetes. And we will be introducing our open source tool, Toolkit. So first of all, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Ramon Nissen. I'm a senior product manager in Red Hat, in case you didn't figure it out with my picture. And I'm the product manager for the migration toolkit for applications. There you have my coordinates, just in case you want to reach out in Twitter. And I would say the most relevant thing about myself and related to the topics that we will be discussing today is that I've been in Red Hat for more than 5 years already. And of these years, I spend the most of them in Red Hat Consulting as an architect, helping customers and organizations with OpenShift adoption projects and by extension, Kubernetes adoption projects and large-scale migration projects as well. So I kind of have some sort of experience on the field with these topics, and I want to share some of that experience with you, which I think is what this whole meetup and community is about. So enough about me, enough talking about me, and let's move on. So first of all, I want to provide some statistics and figures to provide some context and just to try to understand where do we come from and what we're trying to achieve here. I understand statistics and figures are going to become some sort of a snooze fest for the most technical people in the audience, but I try to make it as quick as possible and as painless as possible. But yeah, I think it's pretty important to understand where we're coming from and why did we decide to create this community, which is Conveyor. So let's get started, and I promise it will be quick. So first of all, we have the CNCF survey for 2020, the last one they published. They said 91% of respondents report using Kubernetes, 83% of them in production. So from that, we can deduce that Kubernetes won the so-called container wars. It has become the standard platform for organizations wanting to adopt containers in general. So it has become a de facto standard in the industry. Moving on, we have the latest Gartner forecast about container management. And on there, we can find that by 2022, more than 75% of global organizations will be running containerized applications in production. So the footprint of containers is growing steadily. And if we combine both insights that we have obtained from this research, then we can conclude that Kubernetes is becoming the default platform for application deployment. So everyone is getting into this container management approach. And from the people that's getting into containers, they are all, or basically all, adopting Kubernetes or looking towards adopting Kubernetes. So it has become the default platform for application deployment. That's something I've been seeing on the field for quite some years already, but I wanted to back that up with some actual facts coming from research. So that's one thing. Kubernetes is becoming the standard for application deployment. But there's also one thing, and that is related to organizations out there focusing on application modernization to leverage that technology. So we have this verified market research forecast related to application modernization. I won't read all that things, but to sum things up, there is a $30 billion with a B dollars business out there on application modernization by 2026. So this proves that it has become a hot topic for all organizations. All of them are involved in this. All of them are investing heavily on modernizing their applications. But there seems to be some sort of problem related to this modernization. So coming back to the Gartner forecast, they say that they expect that up to 15% of enterprise applications will run on a container environment by 2024. But there seems to be a problem with the how. So the bottleneck will be the speed at which applications can be refactored and or replaced. And that is something that in the Kubernetes community, we noticed prior to actually creating it. So there seems to be a series of problems related to this modernization approach. And, I would say some of the most important of them are related to how to actually do this kind of modernization and transformation. So there are a lot of tools and methodologies out there, but on one side, the majority of the existing tools are proprietary and imply some sort of vendor locking and only work for certain cloud vendors, which goes against the hybrid cloud strategy that most organizations out there are willing to adopt. And on the other hand, on the methodology side, most of them sit within organizations and are not generic enough to be transferable and applicable on common scenarios. So there's two things on there. From my experience and from what we have seen in the market as well, there is one another thing that is preventing organizations from embracing Kubernetes, and it's the belief that it is a microservices platform. It's only oriented towards microservices. So if I want to leverage what it has to offer, I need to break my monolith. I need to refactor everything. I need to re-architecture my applications in order for them to work in Kubernetes, which is not exactly true. I mean, on one hand, Kubernetes is I would say the best option out there if you want to deploy microservices architecture. But that's not the only kind of application that could leverage Kubernetes. So one of the important things that I want to share with you is that traditional workloads benefit from being on Kubernetes as well. So for me, one of the most important key takeaways that I would like you to get from this talk is that bringing your legacy applications towards Kubernetes can have a significant boost on the software delivery performance of these applications. And you can get that kind of improvement or boost without requiring a complete re-architecture or rewrite or basically building these applications from scratch. There is no actual need of having to split everything and re-architecture everything to benefit from having your applications in Kubernetes. We're going to demonstrate that basing this on the DORA metrics. I think almost everyone is already familiar with the DORA metrics, which have become a standard to measure the software delivery performance. But just to provide you some context in case you are not familiar with them, they were discovered or developed by the DevOps Research and Assessments team, which is now part of Google Cloud. They made an investigation and research conducted with hundreds or even thousands of organizations out there that were gravitating around the container adoption world. And out of this investigation or research, they published the Accelerate book as a result, which has now become an instant classic since it was published. So from there, we can extract these 4 DORA metrics, which we'll be discussing applied to this example of how traditional workloads or applications can leverage Kubernetes as well. So let's get to it. For example, if you have a legacy application, something coming from an application server, just because Kubernetes has a fault-tolerant nature by design, if you get your traditional application and containerize it and deploy it in Kubernetes, you will get some advantages like high availability, health monitoring, or scaling without the actual need of having to refactor everything. Well, if your application couldn't support high availability before, then you might need to adjust some things. But if it already had some kind of high availability, it's pretty likely that it won't require any kind of effort to have it leverage what the platform can offer. So that's one thing that, just by design, bringing your applications to Kubernetes provides this kind of fault tolerance, which reduces the mean time to recovery metric. On the other hand, with Kubernetes, it's way easier to automate application lifecycle management. And for that, we have the concrete case of CI/CD pipelines. They are way easier to develop and to design in relationship to a platform like Kubernetes. And also you can adopt other models like the GitOps approach. So if you get into that, if you start working in a CI/CD fashion, adopt this GitOps model, you will definitely be reducing the lead time for change and increasing the deployment frequency of your application. And if on top of that, you add some testing to your pipeline, you will reduce the change failure rate as you will increase the quality of the software that you are releasing. And you will be increasing the confidence when releasing that software into production environments. So we've seen an example in which, without requiring a full re-architecture of our application, we will be boosting all these different metrics related to software delivery performance. So since we have established that it actually makes sense to move applications towards Kubernetes, then the typical question that comes from organizations is, how can I actually, adopt Kubernetes? How can I actually create this adoption process when I have a large portfolio of applications? And what I want to share here with you is, not an universal truth, is mostly the experience that I've had on the field and the way that I've seen most organizations succeeding in this Kubernetes adoption approach. The way I've seen these organizations being successful is by treating the application onboarding initiative as a full-blown migration project. So the idea behind this is, rather than randomly deploying applications on Kubernetes, you should have a phased approach that works on the whole application portfolio. So have a holistic approach to your application portfolio and landscape, rather than just onboarding applications randomly to the cluster. In that way, you make the whole adoption process measurable and predictable. And from there, you are able to create some actual estimates and delivery dates that can be trusted. So let's get into the details of each one of these phases and the way they work and what are the activities that the adoption teams should do during each one of them. First one will be the assessment phase. And the idea behind the assessment is to understand the whole application landscape. And I'm going to repeat this. You definitely need to have a holistic view of the whole application landscape. And by landscape, I mean all the application portfolio and also the different processes around that application portfolio. And the idea behind that is that for the whole process to be measurable and predictable, you have to understand the whole universe of applications that an organization has. After you have that understanding of that landscape, you can decide what you want to migrate or not. But if you don't apply this holistic perspective, then you will be missing some stuff, and then you won't have the full picture of what needs to be migrated and what doesn't. So on this holistic view, you have to focus on technology and runtimes on one side, but also on processes, especially the ones related to application lifecycle management. And the idea of this is to identify all the different risks as early as possible, to be able to come up with mitigation strategies that, again, makes the whole process predictable and measurable. So once you have the full understanding of the application landscape, you can move to the rationalize phase. And the idea here is, once you have classified the whole application portfolio, typically using criteria like technology stacks or custom architectures being used for each one of the application types, then you are able to make some informed decisions on what is the best migration approach and strategy for each one of these application types. So typically, all organizations will follow this 6 R's approach that Amazon popularized back in the day. And the idea, is to decide whether you want to rehost, replatform, refactor, or even repurchase, retire, or retain each one of the application types that you have. Once you have made all the different decisions, you have a clear understanding of the application landscape, you have decided what you want to do with each application type, the next stage will be the prepare phase, which is basically all about just getting the platform ready to deploy applications. So it has two main foundations, I would say. On one side is to actually execute the mitigation strategy that you have designed during the assessment phase. So it's pretty important, as I said, to mitigate the risk as early as possible. So during this phase, you try to come up with solutions for the different risks you have detected in isolation. And also, and this is more related to Kubernetes itself as a platform, it's implementing the application deployment model. And when we're talking about Kubernetes, one of the key things are the deployment manifests, or the way in which all the objects that will support the application deployment would look like. Also, runtime images. What images are we going to use to deploy our applications on Kubernetes? The configuration model, whether we want to use config maps and secrets, or we want to use any kind of external configuration service. And also everything related to ALM. We already discussed how Kubernetes enhances the ALM capabilities of an organization. And this comprises basically designing the CI/CD pipelines to further enhance the software delivery performance of the applications and the organization in general. Once we are ready to deploy applications, well, let's start deploying applications. So we suggest doing a pilot first, which is executing the first adoption sprint. And the idea for the pilot, the thing that works best, or that I've seen working best on organizations, is to, during the pilot, migrate a representative set of applications. If during the assessment we found that the organization has several application types, it makes sense on this first sprint to migrate one application per each application type, just to make sure that we are addressing all the potential risks that might be found later on during the whole migration process. So it's important to be pretty selective of the applications that are going to be migrated and select a set of representative applications. Another important thing is to document everything. The idea behind the pilot is to initialize the whole migration process and provide as much documentation as possible for the migrators to understand what they need to do when the adoption process gets into full scale. And a couple of important things about the pilot. It's about testing the migration process that we have designed, but it's also about testing the organization and the capabilities of the organization around the migration. So if there were some kind of commitments related, for example, to how quick the different teams can validate applications, or the speed at which operation teams can provision application namespaces or resources, this is the moment to test that these commitments stand and that the organization is able to perform as expected. And once we have successfully executed this pilot, then it's time to start migrating the application portfolio. So the idea here is to do it in an iterative fashion. And by that, for that, we need to scale the adoption team. We can do several migration threads in parallel. And it's important to do it, as I said, iteratively in sprints. Whoa. So now that we have seen this more generic approach to application migration, let's get into what Conveyor can provide to organizations willing to migrate their applications and willing to embrace Kubernetes as their runtime platform and do this kind of adoption initiative. So I'm guessing most of you are already familiar with the Conveyor community, but well, just to sum things up, Conveyor is an open community. It's all about knowledge sharing, sharing experiences of people that have battled against these kind of adoption projects, and sharing what are the best practices and the things that have worked within their organizations to create this kind of shared knowledge base that from which we can start building a set of tools together to leverage that knowledge and to help on the adoption of Kubernetes. So this knowledge sharing is materialized in the form of regular meetups like this one and articles in our blog. And all the different tools are being built around a series of projects that have been contributed by Red Hat and IBM, although other contributors are welcome as well. And because we want this to be a completely open community, and the proof of that is that we're definitely working on making Conveyor a CNCF sandbox project. So going back to the tools, all of them are completely open source and can be consumed upstream. And these tools are mostly focused on three migration scenarios: the rehost, replatform, refactor. Now we are revisiting the 6 R's framework for that from Amazon. But in Conveyor, we have our own understanding of each one of these R's and what they mean in the context of Kubernetes adoption. For example, we understand the rehost as moving the applications towards Kubernetes without making any changes on the actual applications. And these applications can come from virtual machines that we move without any kind of changes, as I was saying, for them to be executed in KubeVirt, for which we will be using the Forklift project. And if we have already containerized applications coming from other Kubernetes clusters, we can move them towards other Kubernetes clusters, retaining the original images, manifest, and state using the Crane project. The replatform scenario, we understand that one about moving already containerized applications from other container platforms like Cloud Foundry, Docker Swarm, or any other towards Kubernetes. And for that, we have the Move to Kube project. And finally, this is what we will be focusing during the rest of the talk. We have the refactor scenario that we understand as containerizing applications from a more traditional platforms like application servers towards Kubernetes. So it's about getting traditional workloads running in application servers, servlet containers, web servers, containerize them, and deploy them on Kubernetes. And this kind of approach includes both the application modernization and migration to leverage what Kubernetes has to offer. So let's focus on tackle and the kind of vision and approach that we have with our tool. So talking about the vision, I would say it is very simple, but it is very ambitious as well. So I'm going to read this one. We want Tackle to become the ultimate open source toolkit to help organizations safely migrate and modernize their application portfolio to leverage Kubernetes, providing differential value on each stage of the adoption process. And I want to stress the safely word, because in this refactoring scenario, if you are familiar with it, when you're refactoring applications, when you're containerizing applications, there is no magic in here. There is no button that you press and all of a sudden your application has been refactored and now it's containerized. That doesn't happen on application refactoring. So because of that, Tackle is not so much about automating the migration like Crane or Forklift, but it's more about providing as much insight as possible for the adoption leads in charge of these adoption projects to make informed decisions. And on the other hand, we want to provide migrators and developers on the field, the people that are actually performing the changes on the applications, some guidance and some kind of degree of automation for the kind of adaptations they have to do. So the idea behind providing that level of automation for migrators and that level of insight for the decision makers is to reduce the risk and make the migration, as I was saying before, measurable and predictable, and allow organizations to be able to commit to estimates, deadlines, and delivery dates. That's the general vision for Tackle. And now let's get into Tackle 1.0. So I don't know if you knew about this, but we have released the first version of the Tackle operator like 1 month ago, less than 1 month ago. For the moment, it's working pretty well. We already have some reports from the field of consultants and architects actually working with the tool in some engagements. So that's a good thing. And we're already working on some improvements on the user experience. So we might be publishing a new C stream version anytime soon. But for the moment, let's discuss what was published 1 month ago. And from there, we will go into the demo. So first of all, I already mentioned this, but yeah, we have an operator to deploy Tackle. And the first question that I usually get from organization customers and people from the community is that since we are from Red Hat, they kind of believe that it's only compatible with OpenShift, and that is definitely not the case here. We made Tackle for it to be deployed on every Kubernetes distribution. So the Tackle operator is available on the upstream operatorhub.io and also on the operator hub flavor that comes out of the box with OpenShift. Of course, it requires the OLM to be installed on the upstream Kubernetes, but that's the only requirement that we have. And the usage is fairly simple. I mean, we provide Tackle CRD, you instantiate that, and everything gets installed automatically. For the moment, the operator has a capability level 1, but we're already working on enhancing this. We want this to be better and provide a better user experience in the future. That's it for the operator. Let's talk about one of the key elements or components from Tackle, which is the application inventory. And the idea behind this is to allow users and organizations to maintain a portfolio of applications. This is something that enables organizations to have this holistic view of their application portfolio, as we were discussing before. So it is a key component within the Tackle architecture. And it is also the main integration point or hub for all the different tools that we will be adding to the Tackle portfolio in the future. So the idea for the application inventory is that users will be able to add applications and classify them using a tag module, which is very comprehensive, that is extensible, and allows to classify these applications in as many dimensions as a user might want. And we also address concepts like the business services to which each application belongs. And definitely, we also address application dependencies as well. Aside from the application inventory, we also released the Pathfinder Tool, which is a tool that was developed in Red Hat Consulting a few years ago. It's a questionnaire-based tool, and the idea here is to assess the suitability of an application for containerization. So what we do is we have a series of questions that the user has to answer, and from there we are able to raise some risks that might prevent the application from being containerized. So we address different knowledge areas related to the applications, things like application lifecycle management, technology, runtimes, all of that. And from them, we provide enough information for the adoption lead to make the decisions about whether they want to rehost, replatform, refactor the application. So we provide some insights for the leads for them to decide the migration strategy that they want to follow with the application. So that's it for the moment. Let's get into the demo. I don't know if you want to do some questions now, Jonathan, or we can continue with the demo.
Yeah, we have one good question, and I think this will probably lead you into the demo. So are there any tools, best practices for assessment, which would help do discovery of assets and integrations, etc.?
Well, we actually don't have any kind of book or something like that. What we're trying to do with the tool set that we're developing for Tackle is somehow enforcing these best practices, but there is no actual book. A book or document about that. We've been thinking about maybe doing some sort of community approach and try to come up with some sort of generic methodology to do this kind of assessment or even the full-blown migration process. But for the moment, we don't have anything, but that's something that I think it's quite interesting. As I was saying before, the problem that we currently have is that each organization is basically reinventing the wheel in their approach to migration. So what we're trying to do here with the Conveyor community is to come up with some kind of standards to help people out there to do it in a more organized way.
Okay, and I answered this one, but I think it's worth just answering from your perspective. Is Tackle the successor of the Pathfinder tool?
Of the Pathfinder tool, you said?
Yeah. Yes.
It's it's not the successor. Pathfinder has been fully integrated within Tackle. So it's not the successor, it's an enhancement, I would say. So what we intend to have with Tackle is a series of tools that are integrated together that provide some actual value on each one of the migration stages that we discussed before. So for the moment, we have the application inventory and Pathfinder. In the future, we will be adding some other tools coming from Red Hat, IBM, and other GSIs and vendors out there. So what we want to do is to tackle, no pun intended, the different stages of the migration process and provide value on each one of them. So to answer the question, the short answer, it's not the successor, it's an enhancement, and it will be further enhanced in the future.
Okay, and those are all the questions for now, Ramon.
Okay, so let's get into the demo. So I assume you are seeing my screen now, so you're seeing the interface for Tackle?
Yes.
Okay, so first of all, let's log in. We're going to see the application inventory and Pathfinder. So 1 second here. I hope nobody deploys anything on this environment while we are doing. Okay, nice. I'm in. Okay, so this is the application inventory. As I was saying before, the idea here is for an organization to be able to manage their application portfolios. So you can create the different applications you have. You can also import the applications using CSV for the moment. We're working on many other ways to achieve that. But yeah, once you have your applications, you can start working on them and classifying and adding some meta information that allows you to rationalize your application catalog. So for example, we have this first application here, the absence. If we open this, we can see all the different tags that have been applied. For example, this application is a Java application running on RHEL. It's a Tomcat, and it uses an Oracle database. So this tagging model, as I said before, is extensible. The tool ships with a curated set of tags, but these tags are completely extensible. So, for example, one of the key criteria to classify applications that I've seen on organizations is usually based on the custom architectures or the custom technologies that those applications are based on. So let's for example go to the tags and create a new tag type, which we will call custom framework. We have the rank, which basically allows to set the priority or the order in which the tags are going to be shown when displayed. Let's just use whatever color. So we have created this custom framework, and then let's add some tags to there. So let's say, for example, we will be talking about insurance. So local architecture, which is the general framework from a company, and let's create another one. Let's say it's InsureArch, which will be the framework for insurance applications within that company. So now that we have these tags, I can go to the inventory and let's filter the catalog. Let's see the insurance applications. We have the motor insurance. Okay, we have filtered, and then let's edit this holier one and add the corpo architecture. So we can see all the different tags that have been applied, and save it. And maybe we will have this motor sure that we will have these insure. Oh yeah, InsureArch. There you are. So that's it. What this application inventory does is that it allows you to manage and classify your application portfolio, but it also serves as the integration point or the starting point to start the other different business related or migration or adoption related processes. For example, the assessment. So let's create a new application. We will call it motorcycle. Looks like this. It will be related to the motor insurance, and it's going to be a Java application running on EAP, and it uses the Insure architecture, and it's running on RHEL. So let's create it. Okay, this is the demo effect. Damn it. So it seems like somebody is deploying something on the environment right now. That's why I brought another environment here, just to make sure this didn't happen. So allow me to do the same thing. Okay. Bear with me. Okay. Oh, it's not Quarkus. Draco. What makes live presentations funny to watch. Here we are. So let's try to create that application on this instance and pray for nobody being deploying anything on this environment as well. So we were talking about this motorcycle roadside assistant application. It's related to the motor insurance, and we were saying that it was a Java application running on EAP, and it was RHEL. And I think already had this. I didn't have the tags created in this environment, so let's imagine that they were present here. We have this motorcycle roadside assistant, so let's start with the assessment of the application. So I can select it and start the assessment process. For those familiar with the Pathfinder application, these are the typical Pathfinder assessment flow. So I will be able to select the stakeholders related to the applications on all these stakeholder groups related to the application as well. And from there, a questionnaire is presented, and I can choose different answers to different questions that are related to, as I was saying, different areas related to the application landscape. So dependencies, architecture, or observability, and the cross-cutting concerns, which is related basically to ALM and operations. So let's go down the questionnaires. These are random answers I'm providing. Next one. I'm trying to be as quick as possible, so bear with me here. And we're almost there. There we are. So now I can see that my motorcycle roadside assistance, the assessment has been completed, but I haven't reviewed the application. And what do we mean by review? Let's check it out. I select the application, go into review, and from here, I see all the different risks that have been detected out of the answers that I gave to the different questions. So I have the list of risks down here, the answer that I provided to a certain question and the risk associated to that answer. And with that information, the adoption lead can actually decide whether they want to rehost, replatform, refactor, repurchase, retire, or retain the application. So let's say I have 6 high risks here, so I might need to change some things. So I will choose to refactor. And then from there, with the insight that I have about the application, I can decide what's the level of effort required and provide some information about the business criticality and the work priority, and also add some comments. So from there, I can review the application. So now it's completely assessed and reviewed. The interesting thing about this is that we have these high-level reports view in which we can see all the different aggregated data from our applications. So we can have the full view of the whole portfolio, but that doesn't provide some usable information when you have a large portfolio. So for example, let's focus on the motor insurance applications. And it shows that I have 4 applications that have a high risk for migration, and one of them that has been unassessed. In here, you have the candidate distribution, which provides information about the criticality, priority, the effort, and the confidence that we have out of the answers, or the confidence in the migration process that we have obtained out of the answers of the different questions. And we also have a graph view of the different applications. So it looks like I should take a look at the architecture of these different applications, because they are not advisable to move as they are right now. We also have an adoption plan here that takes into account the dependencies between applications. For example, we have the backend and the front end of the car roadside assistant application. So since the front end depends on the backend, it tells us to migrate first the backend and afterwards migrate the front end. And also we have a list of the different identified risks that we found in the applications after performing the assessment. And that's it for the demo. Any questions about the tool, or so we can come back to the presentation? Anything on the chat? Jonathan?
So I don't have any questions about the tool itself right now. This is a little bit more related to the roadmap. The question I do have is Tackle integrated with Migration Toolkit for containers, or is there a roadmap going in that direction?
Okay, Migration Toolkit for containers. For the moment, I would say no, but there might be some integration in the future. There is a roadmap in there to have the integration with the Migration Toolkit for applications, or not Migration Toolkit for applications, which is a downstream product, but with Windup, which is the upstream project behind the Migration Toolkit for applications. So for the moment, we do have some work to do on that. But for the containers, well, the natural thing for all the Conveyor tools is that in the future, we envision them being integrated, and the application inventory maybe being the entry point for the whole set of Conveyor tools. That's still something to be discussed in the community. We are on an early stage right now, and this is something we need to discuss.
Okay, and I have two more questions. The next one is, are there any specific languages supported in Tackle?
Yeah, for the moment, the only language that we support is Java, but in the future, we're starting to think about the .NET as well. But that's an early concept, and that is something that we still need to discuss with the community.
Okay, and then what are the key enhancements from Pathfinder?
Well, the user experience for the moment is mostly the same. In terms of just Pathfinder, what we did was to rebuild the old Pathfinder from scratch. So we took the functional specification of Pathfinder and basically rebuilt it from scratch to adapt it to the architecture that we were pursuing in Tackle. So right now, Pathfinder is mostly the same as it was before, but there's the application inventory, which is way more powerful than the kind of approach to inventory that Pathfinder had back in the day. But this is the first version of Tackle, so this is the very beginning of this. We intend to enhance Pathfinder in the future for it to support multiple questionnaires and for users to be able to enhance the questionnaires and the logic behind the risk calculation. So that's something we're already starting to discuss and that we're planning to do. So for the moment, it's mostly the same, more modern, and that you can deploy on your own Kubernetes cluster using an operator. In the future, there will be a lot more on Pathfinder.
Okay, and there's a couple more that just rolled in. They're pretty good ones too. So the next question is, how did the apps list load into this tool in the first place? What are all the options to get the data in there?
Okay, so for the moment, there's the traditional manual entry, which I understand is not the best approach. And also we have a CSV import feature. So you can have all your application list on a CSV and import it on the application inventory. We're working on enhancing the user experience for the CSV importer and might allow other sources in the future. But for this first release, that's what we have.
Okay. Excuse me. And then the next question is, when do we see the refactoring attempt and Tackle? Do you have any rough idea on that?
Well, I think we're going to discuss that right now with the upcoming initiatives that we're planning to add to the Tackle Toolkit. But yeah, for the moment, what we have is mostly focused on the assessment phase of the migration process that we discussed. We are planning with the different projects that both Red Hat and IBM, and as I am saying, other vendors and GSIs are contributing to Tackle. The idea is to be able to address each one of the different stages of the whole migration process. So for the refactoring, well, let's get into the next slide. I think it mostly answers the question by itself. There are many initiatives coming up, and one of them is to contribute the Windup project, which is the analysis piece that we want to contribute. Well, it's the upstream project behind the Migration Toolkit for application, and it's focused on application refactoring. So the idea for Windup is to be able to analyze an application and detect what needs to be changed for the application to run on a target platform or runtime. So for helping organizations or adoption teams refactor their applications, we will be contributing Windup in order to have this kind of analysis to find out what needs to be changed on the target environment. And that's something that we plan to have fully integrated with the application inventory by the end of this year. We're already working on that. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. Debasish, I think that's how you pronounce it. Please feel free to put anything in the chat if I didn't answer it. The second, I have another question for you, Ramon. The other one is API support for the tool. To do all the screening functions through APIs, is that something you have now, or?
There's an API on the backend services for these. The full backend, API exposure for it to be fully consumable outside of the toolset. That's something that on the Windup side is something that we're already working on. I'm not so sure about the application inventory, but that shouldn't be far away from now. I don't think that's already available in there for an external consumption model, but it's something that we will be investing some time on.
Okay, and those are all the questions for now.
Okay, so let's finish this thing. We're running out of time. I'll try to be as quick as possible. So we have discussed, I want to stress that this is the very first version of Tackle. So this is an early development. There are many things coming up to provide some more value on the different stages of the migration process, as I was saying. And I want to discuss some of them. We already talked about Windup, which Red Hat will be contributing in the upcoming months. But we also have a lot of projects coming from IBM research that are really exciting and really enhance and will expand the scope of what can be done with Tackle in the future. So first of all, we have the containerization assessment, which uses AI to be able to understand the description of an application provided using natural language. And from there, it is able to suggest what is the most suitable container image to containerize the application, which is pretty useful on the earliest stages of the migration process. We also have the automated configuration discovery, or I think the name has changed to Tackle configuration discovery. And the idea behind this is to be able to locate and transform the different configuration files of an application to adapt them to the target platform. So for example, when we are migrating, let's say from Spring Boot towards Quarkus, this tool will be able to locate the configuration files, load them and adapt them and output configurations files that are compatible with the Quarkus runtime. We also have the Data Intensive Validity Advisor, or DIVA, like we like to call it, which analyzes the data layer of applications and is capable of detecting dependencies between applications and different data stores. And it's also capable of detecting distributed transactions. And finally, and one of the most interesting projects for me, there's the test-driven modernization tool, or Tackle test, as it has been called, I think, that allows that an application behaves exactly the same once it has been migrated. So the idea here is to create some sort of functional profile of the application in its original environment. And that functional profile is created automatically by generating test cases. So once we have these test cases, we can migrate the application towards the target runtime and execute those test cases to certify that the application behaves exactly the same. And since I'm the product manager of Migration Toolkit for Applications, and I'm directly involved in the development of Windup, and I want to say hi to my engineering team, which I think are here. I want to discuss Windup for a bit. I already added some detail about the tool, but yeah, just to sum things up, the idea here is that it's able to decompile and analyze Java source code, and it uses a set of rules to determine what needs to be changed for an application to run on the target environment, and provide some estimates on the effort required to perform that kind of changes. So this was originally created back in the day, so that the tool is not new. It has almost 8 years, I think. And it was originally created for migrations related to application servers, things like WebSphere or WebLogic towards CAP. But since the rules engine that it uses very powerful and extensible. We have added rules related to containerization, cloud native, and things like that for it to be leveraged within the context of Kubernetes adoption. There are many flavors for Windup. There is a CLI, there is a web UI, which is what the operator is expected to deploy on your Kubernetes clusters. And there are also many IDE plugins, and we are just about to release one for IntelliJ, which was the only one that we didn't have already. And as I was saying before, it's going to be integrated with the application inventory in the upcoming months. So there's a bit more about the roadmap here. So we just released 1 month ago this first MVP for the application inventory and Pathfinder within Tackle. So in these months, we will be working on the integration between Windup, just trying to create an API for Windup to make it generic enough for it to be consumed from different applications or tools out there. That is especially important when integrating with a set of IBM tools. And by the end of the year, we expect to have this full integration and have this seamless user experience for people to be able to, from the application inventory, launch the assessment or the analysis of applications with just a click. And related to the extended analysis features or the IBM projects, like I was saying, we are actively working with our colleagues from IBM just to have this kind of integrations of their tooling within the overall Tackle user experience. And we have detected, since most of their tools are related to the extension of the analysis, we have detected that Windup is a natural point for integration for all of our tools. So we're definitely working on that and on integrating the application config discovery with the containerization advisor with the application inventory and things like that. So expect many cool things coming up in the upcoming months. And that's it for me. That's it for me. What do you have any other questions?
Yeah, so there's a little bit more clarity. So I actually see the question is, how is Red Hat MTA connected to Tackle from an offering standpoint? I think you touched on some of this, but I think it would be good to kind of draw the line, where they differ and where they're similar.
Absolutely. So yes. Well, MTA, or the Migration Toolkit for Applications, right now is a product, is a downstream offering from Red Hat that is based on the upstream project called Windup, the one that we just discussed. So for the moment, MTA is the downstream of Windup. So in the upcoming months, we will be contributing Windup to the Conveyor community, and the future versions of MTA will be based on Tackle as a whole. So right now we have the 5.x versions of the Migration Toolkit for Applications, which are based on Windup. The 6.x versions of MTA will be based on Tackle as a whole and will include the application inventory, Pathfinder, and the analysis bit that we've included in the past versions.
Thank you, Ramon. And then the other question is, do any Kubernetes users start using Tackle to perform migrations that you know of?
Sorry, can you repeat?
So have any Kubernetes users started using Tackle to do migrations?
You mean Kubernetes, vanilla Kubernetes and not OpenShift, or Kubernetes in general?
I think just Kubernetes in general.
Oh yeah, definitely. We already have some reports from the field from consultants and architects that are starting to work on migrations. So this application portfolio management thing has been a traditional problem on larger scale migration projects. So when we're talking about hundreds or thousands of applications, managing this portfolio with a spreadsheet becomes a problem. So once we released Tackle, there were many consultants and architects out there just waiting for this to be available, just to have a centralized way of managing the application portfolio of customers and organizations they're working with. So we already have some reports of people using this on the field.
Okay. And this looks more like a comment than a question, but I guess it's something to kind of just stir your thinking. So
Okay.
clients may not like decompilation. Also, I don't understand how decompilation will help refactoring.
Yeah, you mean the decompiling the binaries? Well, it's been a common practice out there. So there have been migration scenarios in which the customer is not able to provide access to the source code right from the beginning of the migration project, but they have access to the application servers and all the binaries that have been deployed in there. So in order to avoid blocking the whole assessment initiative until we get access to the different repositories, it's been a situation in which customers, first of all, give us the access to these binaries for us to start analyzing everything. And once we get access to the source code, we can start working on the refactoring. So I would agree that this is not the ideal scenario, but sadly, it's pretty common on customers out there, especially when the migration initiative or the adoption initiative doesn't have a strong sponsorship within the organization. So you might find that some migration initiative comes from the, let's say, operations team, but is not completely endorsed by some of the development teams. So the operation teams have access to these binaries, but don't have actual access to the source code. So in order to avoid blocking the whole migration initiative, we came up with this solution of decompiling the binaries just until we have access to the source code.
Thank you, Ramon. And I think those are all the questions. So actually, okay, so I just got one more question. So does Pathfinder within Tackle help us do the 6R analysis?
Oh yeah. So yeah, the idea behind Pathfinder is to provide enough insight for the adoption lead or the architect in charge of the migration initiative to make the actual decision by himself or herself. So it doesn't provide suggestions just yet. What it does is provide enough insight for the user to perform an informed decision. So the idea is to give you all the information you might need to decide whether you want to refactor, rehost, or replatform your application. And I'm saying this is something, or this is something that is like this for the moment because we are exploring the idea of leveraging the AI capabilities of the IBM tooling to provide some sort of recommendations based on some, let's say, common knowledge base, but have a tool that can learn from previous decisions that have been made within the organization and provides a set of, let's say, customized recommendations on how to proceed depending on the application type. But that's something that we're starting to discuss and that might come in the future. But for the moment, the actual decision of whether to rehost, replatform, or refactor is made by the adoption lead or the architect conducting the assessment.
Okay. And then I think this would be the last question. I know we're over time, but these are really good questions. So the question is, Ramon, how can we add dynamic storage class to PVC managed by Tackle CR?
I don't know. That's a very technical question that I don't know how to answer. Actually, I don't have the low-level implementation details of the operator. What I would suggest for Rajiv, I think, is the one that answered or made this question. I would suggest him to just get into pound Kubernetes channel within the pound Conveyor channel within the Kubernetes Slack and ask the engineers. We're all hanging out there, and we're happy to answer any questions that you guys might want to ask. So get in touch with us using the mailing list or using the pound conveyor channel within the Kubernetes Slack. So sorry for not being able to answer that one.
Well, I think that leads to, we can conclude with that. And I actually just put the Slack URL in the chat. So please, okay. Rajiv, put that question in there. The engineers are hanging out there, so they may be able to give a better answer than we can. But everyone, thank you so much for joining us. And Ramon, thank you as well. Well, we'll send out the recording in about 2 days along with the slides. So we'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.